Hi everybody, my name is Joey Lin and I'm a test preparation specialist located here in sunny Southern California. I've gotten a perfect score on the SAT and ACT and I've coached many students to getting perfect scores as well. Honestly, my answer to that question is you should try to take both. For about 80% of my students, they score equally well in both tests, and while they're prepping for one, they kind of develop the skills they might need for the other. So the biggest difference is the SAT tests a higher level of reading comprehension, whereas the ACT tests more speed and answering a bunch of questions in a short period of time. So while you're prepping for the speediness of the ACT, you're kind of developing the skills for the SAT. And then while you're critically thinking for the questions on the SAT, you kind of do develop skills for the ACT. The content matter is about 80% overlapping, so you don't have to choose one or the other right from the start. And then maybe as you prep, you kind of discover, wait, I'm much better suited for this one test. So when you're first starting, don't narrow yourself into just one test. I like to divide students into 3 different categories. So they're the early testers. So early testers may take the test around the end of their sophomore year or at the beginning of their junior year. So these are students who may have taken pre-calculus or honors pre-calculus during their sophomore year, and they're also reading at an 11th or 12th grade level or even higher. So I kind of give my students a reading assessment to see where they're at. I also test them for their reading speed. If they can read at a speed of 300 words per minute or higher, then they're definitely able to take the ACT as early as their sophomore year. The second group of students would be the typical test takers. So they'll want to take the test around spring of their junior year. So they take it this early so that if they don't do well in the spring of their junior year, they can take it again maybe in the summer or in the fall of their senior year if they have to. So this is where a large majority of students are going to fall into. So if you're a junior right now and haven't signed up for the test in the spring, I would recommend you do so. The third group of students is going to be the late testers. So these are students who may take their first test in the fall of their senior year. So these students might want to take the test late because they're really busy focused on getting their academics up to par. So maybe they'll be in Algebra 2 in their junior year, or maybe they haven't even taken Algebra 2 yet. Or maybe they want to make sure that they have their reading skills and fundamentals down underneath them. For a baseline test score, these testers would be below a 21 on the ACT or below a 1050 on the SAT. If you're at that level in your junior year, you definitely want to prep as hard as you can over the summer after your junior year so you can take it in the fall of your senior year. So there are other things that you do want to consider because every student's situation is not the same. For example, if you're a recruited athlete and you want to play sports in college, you do want to try to take the SAT or ACT earlier on, even in your sophomore year if you can, so you can present an official score to coaches. Also, if you're taking 3, 4, or even 5 APs your junior year, your spring's going to be filled with prepping for AP tests. So you don't want to be prepping for the SAT and ACT at the same time. So in that case, you may want to try to schedule your SAT or ACT earlier in the winter so you don't have to juggle 2 tests at the same time. The easiest way to concord SAT and ACT scores is to click on the link below. We have a concordance table on our website, and it's the same concordance table that admissions counselors will use when they're comparing SAT to ACT scores. Schools have no preference anymore. There used to be a preference prior to 2011, but as of now, schools don't care. As long as you submit a test score, they're going to take either one. Typically speaking, we want students to prepare for at least 3 months prior to their test date. So if you haven't taken a baseline right now, I'd suggest you take a baseline and know that after 3 months, you can expect your score to improve anywhere from 100 to 150 points on the SAT and maybe 3 to 5 points on the ACT if you diligently study. You may want to hire a professional to help you for a couple reasons. One is structure. Having somebody plan out your lessons for you and give you some sort of accountability makes you work a little bit harder. And the other reason is it'll save some time. These tests cover years and years of content, and by working with a coach, the coach can help narrow down the different topics to the ones you specifically need to work on. So instead of randomly like studying 100 questions, the coach can kind of figure out, hey, these are the 10 questions you really need to focus on. So, earlier how I said you need about 3 months to prep, that coach can narrow that time in half because then you're only practicing the things that are your weakness. The SAT has registration deadlines 3 weeks prior to their test date, and the ACT has a registration deadline 5 weeks prior to their test date. Now for really popular test dates like the April ACT or the May SAT, you'd want to schedule months in advance. The test costs about $50 to $60 for the SAT and ACT. It does cost a little bit extra for the essay. However, I recommend to most of my students that they don't need to take the essay because 99% of colleges do not require it. And then you can also pay extra on certain test dates for a copy of your answer key. So I definitely recommend doing that. It's about $20 for the SAT and the ACT. If you're a freshman or a sophomore and your school offers the PSAT or the PACT, I definitely recommend you taking it. That way you can kind of get an idea of what your baseline level is at. So when you get your score, then you can kind of compare it to the colleges that accept that type of score. And then that can also help you figure out a plan for your testing. If you know you want to improve your score by 200 or 300 points, you know that you'll need about a year to do that. Versus if you're only like 50 points away from your target score, you can plan for about 2 to 3 months just so you can prep ahead of time. Students may want to take the test more than a couple times if they don't get their target score. So if you do that, you do want to be careful because there are colleges out there that request that you send every single score that you've taken. Now some schools do only look at your best sitting, so they'll take that one score and disregard all the other scores, while some other schools do something called super scoring. So super scoring is when they take the best subscore from each subsection and combine them to make a new bigger score. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and as always, you can like, comment, and subscribe.